And also, Sam, I don't know if you want to, we are there. So, welcome everybody to another episode of Barbershop Conversations. Listen, we're going to have another in depth moment where we're going to talk about real issues, real subject matter that is important not only to us as African American men, but that's important to our communities and our wives and our significant others. And most importantly, today, to our children. I want to make
Amen.
sure that what we do is always done in a way that is clear, precise, and transparent so that those who are listening can clearly, without a doubt, know what we're talking about and feel free to chime in. As you always know, that ability is there. All you got to do is send us a comment. Our comment chat live is always live, and you can always let us know what you're thinking, what you're feeling, or interact with what you hear. So please do that. So today I have an opportunity, and I'm blessed, as always, to have another one of my brothers come on with me. This brother right here, man, I met him, gosh, we're talking close to 20 years ago.
Yep.
Close to 20
2003.
years ago, we connected, man, and immediately our kindred spirits, was in alignment. He is a good dude. One of the things that I love about him and the reason why he's on today is because he has been, in my opinion, the clear example of what a good father looks like. This man has stepped in that role and has inspired me in a lot of ways to be a better dad. So I'm excited, man, to have this cat on here with me, man. He has a long resume of things that I could probably go down, but I'm not going to do that to him. I'm going to let him come to the table and share with you who he is, give a little snapshot of what he does, and then we're going to get into the heart of conversation. So I'm gonna let you go right ahead, man. Give the people a little bit about who you are.
Amen, brother. Thank you for having me on, brother Ned. Always appreciate being in your presence, man.
Yes, sir.
And the work that we've done over the years, I think has been impactful to many young people, right? And that's
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
crux of who we are. It's about engaging and impacting young people at multiple levels.
Yes,
And
sir.
so, my name is Sam Frisbee. For those who don't know me, I'm the former director of Recreation, Natural Resource, and Culture for the city of Trenton, which is where we actually met.
We interact,
uh,
yeah.
and since I've been here in the city of Trenton for the last 20 years, I've held many different roles, worn many different hats. I'm also the former CEO of the Capital Area YMCA, which used to be the Trenton YMCA until I got it renamed, and did some work there for the last 10 years. And just recently, about 4 months ago, I resigned my post there because I got an opportunity to connect with YMCA of the USA. So I'm now
Mm,
the Director of Strategic Intervention for the YMCA of the USA. I'm also an elected official here in Mercer County, so I've been an elected county commissioner for the last 10 years. But the most important thing for me is that I hold the title of husband and
mm.
dad, right?
Yes, sir.
And I do that as my service to God and the work that He's placed me here to do. The African proverb that I love to quote, that I grew up with in my mother's household, and I've carried it over into my professional life and in my life as a parent, is that the ruin of a nation begins in the homes of its people. And so if you
Right.
look at, many of the old African proverbs, talk about the family, the village, and most importantly, the children.
Yes.
There used to be an old African adage where instead of asking you how you're doing, they would always ask you, how are the children?
How are the
And the
children?
response, if the family is doing well, is the children are well,
That's right.
right? Because if the children are well, the household is
The
doing well.
household as well.
And so that's really, really important to understand that that's the ethos of who I am, right? And so I do what I do because of my wife and my children.
Awesome. Awesome. So, on that note, before we get into this, I'm going to be remiss if I don't do this because it's important for us to just do as we talk about family and our culture, right? We need to do check ins. And I don't want to ever start a show without doing our wellness check in. So, bro, how is the family? How are the boys? How are you?
So the family as well, and when the
There we
family
go.
is well, I'm just fine, right? I mean,
Awesome.
I do everything that I do. I work the way that I work. I'm the minister of music at two different churches.
Mm,
I still do all the stuff politically that I do. I do that because I want to impact community, in every position that I've ever taken in my life, because I could be okay being a janitor, but I do the other things that I do so that my family is well. And so
Awesome.
my family's doing well. The boys are doing incredible. Teska, as you know, is doing really well in the
Yeah.
process of running for West Ward City Council, which, for her was a leap and a leap of faith, but
Amen.
she's doing it because she believes that this is a calling that God has placed on her, and that God has placed many of His soldiers in the political realm, because the word says that we are in the world but not of the world. And so we
Amen.
can walk in this particular genre and in this life and in this world without doing what everybody else does, but we bring a sense of center in Christ into the situation when we walk into the situation.
That's right.
So that's really important, that God has placed His soldiers in many different places. So they're doing well. So whenever they're doing well, I'm doing great.
That's what I like to hear. That's what I like to hear. Yeah, it's important for us to make sure that we keep that center. And like you, God is the center of everything that I do. And as long as I am lining myself up with Him and His call over my life, I trust that everything else is lining up right in accordance. So
Hello,
yeah,
and your crew is doing great.
listen, man.
I've been checking in. I'm watching them, man. Look, I'm
Listen,
proud of those boys.
I just said to somebody today, they asked me, how's your baby doing? I said, that joker is as big as I am. He is not a baby no more.
Yeah, yeah.
When you get over 6 foot, I ain't calling you baby.
You call you a baby no more, right?
You're not a
In
baby
your
no more,
in
dude.
your head, you still trying to get over it, because
Yeah,
you realize
yeah.
that's your
I
baby
haven't wrapped my
always,
head around it
but he's
completely,
looking
but
you eye to eye, right?
not when he eye to eye with me. You don't get called baby.
Exactly.
Your plate look as full as mine when we leave the dinner table. Yeah, nah, you ain't.
It's a little larger than
Yeah,
yours because he's
yeah.
burning more calories.
But that man that's living in the house with me, yeah, I know him. He all right.
There it is. There it is.
Yeah, but yeah. My boys are well, man. I don't even know if I've shared this with you. Come July, I'll be a grandfather.
No, I didn't
Um,
know that. Congratulations. So
yes,
that
sir.
the
Yes, sir.
gray in
So
your beard is gonna have
yeah,
meaning now.
it's earned. It's earned time. So yeah. Miles is expecting a daughter come July. So I'll be a grandfather, and I'll have the one daughter that I've not had,
There you go. Oh, look, and it's even better because you get to spoil this one,
and then send her home.
and send her home.
Going
You
back
know
home.
what I mean? It's like doing all the stuff. I know. I remember when I had my kids, and my mom was doing certain things. I was like, "Who this woman?
Who is this lady?
You weren't around when I was a kid. Who is this woman?
Yeah,
I wanted that woman when I was a kid."
yeah. I'm looking forward to being that parent now. I'm gonna be the grandparent that's gonna be like, here, what you want?
Uh
Mommy
huh.
said, "Look, go ahead. Tell your mama I gave it to you. Tell your
That's right.
daddy I said you can have it,
That's right.
and
That's
send her
right.
back home with it." So,
Look,
yeah.
that's why grandchildren were invented, brother, so that
Hello.
you could spoil them like that
Roll
and
them
send
like
them back
that.
home.
That's what we do. That's what I'm gonna be, just that guy.
That's
Earned
it.
time. I'll tell you, listen, for all the grades they put in here, I'm gonna take that time and be like, here, y'all.
That's right.
Yep. They were like, he did not send her home with that loud toy. Yes, I did.
Yes, I did. And I got a backup just in case she breaks
In
that
case you
one.
decide, yeah, I got two just in case you decide to get rid of that one. Yeah, so
There
yeah,
it
no,
is.
family's well, man.
Congratulations to you.
Family's well. I see I got my brother Calvin Thomas is on with us today. Calvin, watching. Appreciate you, man,
Hey,
as always.
Dr. Thomas.
Yes,
Always good
sir.
to see
Yes, sir.
my brother.
Always a pleasure, man. That is my dude. So let's get into our conversation today, because saying we could probably spend an hour just talking about family and the things that we
No
do in the
question.
community and around, and how we feel about what's going on around us. But today I really wanted to take a moment, man, to just talk about autism and how it's impacting our communities, how it impacts, the household. Particularly, I know that you are a parent who has lived and is living with an autistic child, and understanding. And I want to give folks an opportunity to understand the not just the challenges, but even the rewards that come out of it. Because I think parenting is a unique thing to all of us.
Hmm.
And when there are what some folks might consider obstacles, for some of us, God's chosen, they become the blessings. Because I think that, there's so much more appreciation when you're dealing with a child who comes with certain blessings.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And so I wanted to take a time and to just really highlight some stuff today. Um, get your perspective, your side of where it's at, and then even somewhat kind of even talk about some of the myths and misconceptions that are out there to kind
Sure.
of clear the air up about that as well. So that's what I want to do today. If that's all right with you, bro. In our true fashion, what we say always here on the barbershop, man, we're gonna pull the covers back and be transparent. So
Uh,
you ready to pull some covers back?
let's pull the covers back and let's see where God leads us, man, because
Amen. Amen to
the
that. That's what I'm
conversation is
talking
going to
about.
take the turn that He wants it to take.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. So, from your perspective, man, and I know again, I know this has been, for you, a lifetime almost, or half a lifetime of parenting, half your lifetime, and so there, I gotta imagine that there's been an opportunity for you to have done your research, your homework, your and all that comes with that, in the worlds of autism and dealing with that. So educate the folks, including myself, on what is autism and how does it impact the family and your family in particular.
Sure. So I like to kind of give people the walkthrough of,
Please.
Samuel, how he got here. So
Mm,
my oldest son, Samuel Jr., who was born 3 months, 1 day premature. Right. So my wife and
mm,
I had difficulty conceiving a child. We lost, it was either 4 or 5 pregnancies,
wow.
and we were older when we got married. Right. So I was 29 and Tesca was 32. Right. And
Okay.
so when we had Samuel, I think I was 32, maybe 31, 32.
Mm,
Tesca was
wow.
a little bit older. And so we had a difficult time conceiving. Um, when Samuel came 3 months, 1 day premature, he was 1 pound, 12 and a half ounces.
Mm,
Right. And so there was a struggle when he first came out of the womb. They were like, this is a miracle. He came out this early. He doesn't have to go on a ventilator.
oh wow.
And what you don't want is a child to be on a ventilator. And I'll tell you about that and how
Hmm.
that coincides with cerebral palsy and autism. But Samuel, that first 2 days, he was good. He was breathing on his own. Everything was great. The hospital started doing what they call Bolex feeds. And so when a
Okay.
child is that small, in order for them to be able to hold their own temperature, they have to get up to a certain weight.
Hmm.
And so they started doing what they call Bolex feeds, which was they would take a tube um, that was attached to a syringe. They would jam the tube down the baby's throat
Throat.
and
Yep.
just pour milk into it. And
Yeah.
every time they fed him, they realized that he was going into breathing arrest.
Mm,
And they thought that it was lung disease. And so what they did was they put him on a ventilator. Well, a child at that age, you don't want them on the ventilator because what they do is they put the cantilever in their nose. Their brain is not formally developed. So the air that comes through the cantilever begins
it's
to brush
filling the
up against the
space.
brain
Oh wow.
and it begins to damage parts of the brain. And so that's the reason that when a child is first born,
Wow.
you never want them on ventilated air unless it is absolutely necessary. And so this went on for like the first 2 months that he was born, where they would put him on a ventilator, then take him off, but then they do the Bolex feeds. It just so happened to be that you know, Teska and I were there every day and every night, with him. We were living in West Hampton. He was in Philadelphia, at a hospital in
Mm,
Philadelphia. And so one day I said, he only starts to have trouble every time you guys feed him. What would happen if you guys put it on a timer? He said, well, we don't know if that will really work, but we'll try it. They did it. He never had to go back on a ventilator.
wow.
And I always question, you never question God, but sometimes you question yourself.
Yeah.
What would have happened if I had recognized that and realized it earlier,
Earlier.
right?
Mm,
Where would he be? What would be his path? And then many times I just realized his path is what it is because that's
well,
what God needed for
that's
the
what he
world to
needed.
see, right? And it sometimes is a challenge having a child who's differently abled, but he's been a bigger blessing than the challenges could ever be.
Mm,
And so, when you look at autism and you look at cerebral palsy, they really go hand in hand. So
right.
autism is a struggle that has to deal with the brain, and many times it is in delayed learning ability, it's in delayed speech, uh, challenges that a child might have or a young person has, and with loud sounds,
Right.
things of that nature. And sometimes it can manifest itself physically as well. Spasticity of limbs, which also crosses over into that cerebral palsy issue, which again, cerebral palsy is
So
cerebral, the brain, and
mhm,
damage to the brain that, again, has many of those same
many of the
flavors and
same
tensions as
symptoms.
well. And so, it's it challenges some children. So whether it's autism or cerebral palsy, so you've heard of Asperger, which is a higher form of uh, they almost can't tell that a person is autistic with Asperger's in
Mhm.
many different stages. Um, but there's some different learning disabilities with Asperger's. Some people are highly cognitive in terms of their ability to process, like they process numbers
Right.
like that, right? So you have different forms of autism that people don't realize that people can be very highly functioning with autism,
Yeah.
right? And but there are some people that their functionality in terms of at least what we view to be functional is a little bit lower in terms of what they process or how they
Mhm.
process.
Right. Right.
It's interesting. Samuel in school, uh, you know, he is a master when it comes to remembering and memorizing music and lyrics and who actually does them,
Oh wow.
right? And so, me being a musician, I know many, choirs who does them, but he fell in love with gospel, right?
Mm.
And so in his falling in love with gospel, I remember when he was like in, fourth grade, we just told the teachers, look, if you give him an iPad, he can navigate an iPad better than you or I. I said, and if you start to talk to him about church and music, he knows. I remember the very first time that I realized that he has a mastery of
Wow.
who does music is there was a song that Andre Crouch and Pastor Winans had worked on together. Let the church say amen.
Yes.
Now, I hadn't heard the song before, but I heard it in the car, and I was like, "Oh man, Pastor Winans has a new song." And Samuel said, "No, it's Andre Crouch." I said, "That is Pastor
That's what
Winans, dude." He's
you
like,
you you went to
he,
debate with him.
yeah, I'm like, because I know Pastor Winans' voice, right? I know what it is. And
Right.
he's like, it's Andre Crouch. And then after the song went off, they said, that is, Pastor Winans singing on Andre Crouch's. I was like, oh, snap.
It's like, oh,
Okay, you were right,
my
Samuel.
apologies. Right.
My apologies. I will never debate you on that again. So it literally to this day, because I don't remember who does the songs, I just know the song. So when I
Right.
hear them, I can play them. Um, to this day, if I really want to know something, it's like, Sam, who does that particular song? He'll tell me exactly who does it,
Wow.
right? And he'll tell me which version,
Oh wow.
because there might be multiple versions, but he's like, oh, that's this version. So cognitively, when it comes to those things that he fixated on, and that's also a tenor of autism, right? Because
Mm.
autism, many times, people who are autistic, they repeat things, right? So those things that
Right.
mean something to them, it is, like if you saw the Rain Man, the
Right.
movie Rain Man, he was autistic,
Yeah.
right? But numbers was his thing. And so but there were things that he would repeat over and over and over
Over and
again
over again.
because
Right.
that was part of his autistic struggle.
Got you. Got you. Man. Well, I appreciate that. Listen, I was sitting here and I'll just share with you. I was kind of having a moment because, again, I'll go the similar walk we have, dude. I said, I was 32 when Miles was born.
Mm,
Miles was a preemie. He was born,
mm,
he was a little over a month early, and he was
see,
3 pounds 2 ounces at birth.
mm,
And so when you talked about the feeding, I remember going through that with Miles. So I'm like, man, I said, Sam and I connected in ways that I didn't even know.
yeah, yeah.
So
Those
those
that
walks,
was an ordeal, right?
yeah.
Watching your
Oh my
child go through that
gosh,
process.
bruh. Oh man. I mean, listen, to be told that, you know, I tell everybody. So when Miles was born, I never forget it. His mother and I were literally at a prenatal appointment. We were just, hey, it's time to go to the appointment. We sitting at the doctor's
Same thing.
office, and all of a sudden he was like, something's not right. We'll go send you for another ultrasound. I was like, what? And then all of a sudden we spent the entire day in the hospital that day, and then they was like, listen, we're doing an emergency section, got to remove the baby. I was like, I couldn't even begin to tell you what the doctor said, because it all was like a blur when he started talking. He just said, "We're taking the baby now." And I was just like, what? It's
Yeah,
not
see,
time. What are
but
you
see,
doing?
and people, nobody will recognize that, right? It's very
No.
interesting. And see, this is how God works, because that's how Tesca and I, but it was over a longer period of time, right?
Right.
So we went for her prenatal appointment,
Right.
and we had gotten to the point that we had lost so many children that we
Mm,
wouldn't tell people until after we were at least through the first trimester,
got
right?
you.
So we finally started telling people, okay, yeah, we're pregnant, and
And then,
then we go for that that appointment. At the appointment, doctor says, you're dilating. We're going to send you by ambulance to the hospital. You need to go.
wow.
So we get there, and the doctor is saying, well, nothing really we can do. You are dilating and your sac is leaking, but there's nothing we can do for you. So
Mm,
we're going to send you home. And I had some words with that
yeah.
doctor,
Yeah.
like, is my insurance good? Yeah,
Right.
well, okay. If the
So
insurance says she can stay, then she's staying.
then
She's
she's
not going
saying,
anyplace.
like, why
Because
are we
what are we
leaving?
going to do? Go home and then something happens and we have to come back?
Yeah.
But see, this is also how God works. Dr. Labrizzi, who was her regular OGBYN, was not in when we went for our appointment. But
Mm,
as we're talking to the doctor at the hospital in Philadelphia, Dr. Labrizzi is downstairs.
oh, wow.
He comes upstairs and is like, it's going to be all right.
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 Let's give
And
her a bid.
after I had my conversation with the doctor, then he had his conversation with the doctor. And she stayed. Now,
Right.
Tesca stayed in the hospital for another 4.5 weeks
Oh, wow.
before they said, okay, that we're going to have to take the baby because,
Wow.
now the baby's going into, some arrest.
Some
But
arrest.
same story, right?
Yeah.
And here's what's crazy. God placed us, in a hospital where one of our good friends was. He was a nurse there. And I
Mm,
tell people this, because I talk to, nursing students about this all the time, because many times the nurses are that front line between
absolutely.
you
Oh my gosh. Are
and,
they ever?
the other side of crazy, because you don't,
That
understand
that
what's
becomes
going
the
on.
lifeline.
And my boy Vern was one of the nurses, and
Mm,
we just happened to go. They started to know us on the NICU, and normally they don't let you in after 11 o'clock. They knew if we came at 3 o'clock in the morning, it's like let the frisbees in, and we just happened to be
yeah.
there one night, and Samuel was going into arrest. And they rushed us out of the room and said, we got to give him oxygen. You guys have to leave out. And I remember being really dejected because my
Mm,
personality.
right.
I've always believed that, okay, I can control my world. I know that God controls it overall, but
Right.
I
Right.
can force my will on certain things. But I
Hmm.
couldn't force my will on this. And I remember walking down the steps, and I told Tesca, I'm gonna go get the car and I'll go by myself. And I remember walking down the steps crying, because I'm like,
Yeah.
God, what do you
What?
need me to get out of this? And I'm walking down the steps, and my boy
Man.
Vernon walks into me, and he's like, Frizz, he's like, I was just going up to see your son, man. He's like, and God set me this way, and he wanted me to let you know everything gonna be all right, and I
Wow.
got you. And every night I go in and I pray with your son, and
Mm,
God sent him at that point in time for me,
for you. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it was a struggle,
Yeah.
realizing and recognizing you can't control everything. And that's part of why God sent Samuel in my world, right? Because God gave me, I tell people that through Samuel, I got my humanity
Hmm.
because I was always a driver. It was just like, no, this is what we're going to do. This is the way that it has to
This
get
is
done.
it. Yeah.
Let's move it. And God gave me my humanity through Samuel,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That was,
it's been a different walk,
yep. Yep.
different walk.
That's funny because that springboards into my conversation because similar to your story, Sam, Miles was that for me. Because I was that guy. Listen, I tell people very much, I was a selfish joker prior to Miles. It was listen, what I want, and like
Yeah.
you, it's like, hey, that's what I'm doing. Locked in, let's go. And it wasn't until Miles was conceived and Miles just even finding out that I was going to be a dad at 32, because I was just like, listen, I wasn't
Right.
planning it. It just, but it changed the way I started looking at life. And then when that first time that I had to go into the NICU unit and put my hands in a pair of rubber gloves to be able to touch my son
Yeah.
was when it
Yeah.
registered to me that God is in control.
Hello.
That
Hello.
when I knew at that moment in time, like Ned, it was one of the most humbling and most frustrating moments of my life when I was standing there and I'm thinking like, there's nothing I can do but just pray to God. Nothing I can do. I have no control here. And so yeah, those were challenging times, man, as a dad. And like you, I remember literally, and I thank God for my mom who was there. Like I would go and work a half a day at, at work at the school, and then I would literally leave the building like by 12, 1 o'clock and go straight to the hospital. And then I'd be there until the next morning. Um, and like you, I had become friends with the nursing staff because they just knew like here comes Ned, and like one of the nurses would get to the point where she knew I liked Pepsis. She would literally make sure that they would bring up dinner and have a Pepsi there with me because she knew I was staying for the night. There was like no question. They were like, he not going home.
That's
He gonna
right.
be here. He
That's
ain't going.
it.
And I would and pray. And there were many a nights, man, where I sat in that room with him and just cried because I couldn't understand why. And like you, we don't question God, but man, do I question the moment and how do I get through it? and
Yeah.
and so there were
Yeah.
moments of like, God, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to do this.
Mm.
Help me. And I mean, it would be runny nose cry. I'm, wiping the nose like I just don't understand. And
That's it.
so yeah, man, those are some challenging times as a parent
That's
to
called
have
give in,
to.
right?
Yeah,
That's when you've given in.
that's
You
surrender.
not give out, but you give in,
You give it.
right?
That's right. That's right. And that's
How long
important
how
for
long
us,
did
man.
Miles stay in the hospital?
He was in the hospital for 30 days. 30 days after birth. Yep.
Samuel came home on his due date, 3 months, 1 day after
Wow.
being in the hospital.
3 months, 1 day early, and 3 months, 1 day before he came home.
Yep.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
It was.
September 19th.
Yeah.
He was born. He was born June 18th.
Yeah. Yeah.
Came
So
home September 19th.
so that's so crazy. So we're yesterday would have made. I'm sorry, not yesterday. Tuesday would have made Miles's anniversary of coming home. He came home. Yep. So yeah,
Wow.
it's crazy. Yeah. Yeah. Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I mean, it hits. And what's interesting is, people, the doctors basically told me and Tesca that, hey, look, don't expect for your son to do anything. He's
Mm,
severely challenged, right? So the how early he came out,
mm,
and the fact that we had him on oxygen and the whole 9 yards. Don't be surprised if he never walks, if he never talks, and
wow.
more than likely he'll lay in the bed for his whole life like a vegetable. That's what they told us to expect.
Mm,
But
mm,
God, they
but
didn't
God.
understand our God,
That's right.
right? And so the blessing for us is they might have said that, but at every milestone we celebrate it. When
So
when
yeah,
Bishop ordained him.
I was about to say that. So let's talk about some of those milestones, Doc. Because like I trust me, I remember getting some of those conversations, and they weren't as intense as the ones you and Tesca had. But I remember hearing doctors say to me, "Hey, there's a possibility he's not going to be fully functional in this area, or anticipate he's not going to do that, and this, and like he'll be challenged in these physical attributes possibly." And I'm thinking like, "Yo, dude, y'all don't even understand who I pray to."
Hello.
And now here he is preparing to go overseas to play ball. Right. So share with me, man, some of those moments, man, those milestone moments when you got a chance to just get your shout on. Because
You know,
God showed that man was a liar in those moments.
Exactly right. Exactly right. I mean, we recognize some of the struggles and challenges right up front.
Mm,
It's part of the reason we moved to Mercer County because we knew that they had a really strong school system. So our
okay.
special services school district is one of the strongest in the state.
Yep.
And Samuel, even most children start crawling, in that first couple months. Samuel didn't start even crawling until after he was a year old.
Mm,
But once he did, we were like, thank you, Lord,
thank you, Lord.
right? For most children, when they need to move their bowels or they do whatever, they just do it in the diaper. We had to help Samuel.
Wow.
We basically had to take a thermometer and put it in his rectum when he had to go to the bathroom, and that's why Tessica's just so incredible. She would do
Mm,
that daily to
wow.
make sure, and she shepherded that child, through
Wow.
every struggle and every challenge. Um, so we had to do just about everything for him, and then when he got an opportunity to walk on his own in his walker, man, that was a shout moment for me because they said never walk,
Right.
but God said not so.
Not so.
You know, Samuel gets up and down stairs. He might have to do it assisted, but he can do it, right? We can have conversations with him. Might not
Mm,
be able to understand him because Samuel takes physical therapy, he takes occupational therapy, and he takes speech therapy in school. He
awesome.
does all of those things, but he does them. And he
Mm.
has this incredible sense of humor uh, that once you really get to know him, it's like, okay, this kid, he's
Right. Right.
hilarious.
He's
He's his one of his teachers, Miss Capriti, she would always say, this kid is hilarious. He walks in and says, "Hey, Dupriti." And he knows my name is Capriti, but he just calls me Dupriti because he knows it gets under my skin. And so I said, well, you really want to get on his good side. Talk to him about church. I said, now, that he is, he calls himself Pastor Sam. He's always, since the time he was, like 4 years old, has wanted to be
that's it.
a preacher, right? That's his thing. So I remember once he started calling himself Pastor Sam. And we were like, okay, we're going to address him as Pastor Sam. So we told her, hey, look, you dress him as Pastor Sam, you're gonna be Ed. So she said, he gets to the door, he rolls his wheelchair down to the door, you know, he gets up and gets into his K-Walker. She says, "That's a great job, Pastor Sam." He looks at her and says, "That's Bishop to you." So,
Jeez.
you know, that was one of the milestones. But I tell you, the biggest milestone for us was when, um, you know, Pastor Jenkins, Bishop Jenkins, has always kind of watched Samuel. Every
Mm,
pastor that has ever seen him and is engaged with him just says he's such an encouragement to me. He's got a ministry that is not your ordinary ministry. And I
right.
remember when Bishop Jenkins said to me, he always asks, "How's your son doing? How's Pastor doing?" And he says, one day he just says, "I'm doing an ordination service for my ministers in my church and deacons. I'd like to ordain your Pastor Sam." He said, "God has laid it on my heart to ordain him.
Wow.
And I'd like to know if you and your wife would allow me the honor of doing that." And I talked to Tesca and we were like, man, that was a shout moment.
Yes,
And
sir.
if you had an opportunity to attend the ordination service,
Wow.
um, it was one of the most majestic your ordination
Mm,
services that you ever want to attend. We had church family from the multiple churches that I either played for that we had attended.
right.
That people
Right.
came up from Maryland and DC, and it was just a shout moment, not for us, but for everyone
Yeah. Yeah.
that was there. And so that was just a blessing to watch and to
Oh man.
see how God used
Wow.
him and how God moved in that service.
Yeah. Yeah. And I gotta imagine, and I've had an opportunity as well to see Samuel grow up. I remember the first time you and Tesca brought him to the track and walked around with the stroller with him at Trenton Track Club, just
Hello.
exposing him and then allowing him to be a part of that socialization was huge. Um, but I can't begin to imagine, man, how impactful those moments had to be, not just for you and Tesca, but for all the folks who are connected to you guys, because you guys are interwoven into the community in such a way that, to remove you would tear the fabric apart. but
Amen.
but to see him grow, develop, and thrive even in a way that causes so many folks to just live. And that's one of the things that I've always been moved by, was the fact is just watching the smile on his face. You know, Despite what's going on, he's always been in a spirit of gratitude and thankfulness that
Yeah.
lets you say, "Man, can we just bottle that?
Yes.
Can we bottle that right there?" And that's been, at least for me, one of the biggest blessings, man. That I've gained from having an opportunity to be around your family and Samuel in that way, because he's inspired me, and I said it earlier, that relationship that I see between you and he is what keeps me sometimes driving, because I'm like, listen, my boys are as healthy as government mules, but they come with their sets of challenges that
Yep.
make me have to dig deep some days, and restrain from putting my hands on them even sometimes. But
Yeah.
when I look at,
Restraint is the better course of valor, you know.
man, yes, it is, Lord. Oh, thank you, Lord. Uh, but it inspires me to see it and to know that, man, despite whatever our children's challenges are, our responsibility as men of color, I'm going to pick specifically to that, is to model the behavior, to nurture the behavior, and then, you know, be consistent with the behavior in a way
Yep.
that allows our sons and our daughters to develop in that and develop under that. And I think that that's huge for us, right? As a culture. Um, and that's just talking about parenting at a basic need, right?
Yep.
When I think about the struggles, challenges, and the blessings that are on you and your wife, um, it just transcends that. It just takes that to a whole different place from in my head and in my heart. And so, give me a snapshot, man, if you can, of. I mean, you've shared somewhat into some degree, but I want to. How do I word this? The situation that you guys have to deal with on the daily, the challenges of your daily, um, aren't the same as mine,
Yeah.
right? We are both men who parent to the best of God's ability in us,
Yep.
right? But, and I'm just going, I don't say this about a lot of folks, Sam, but I'm going to say it. The grit and the tenacity and the stick to itness that you display in parenting far exceeds mine, right? Not in a
I
way
don't know about
that's
that, brother, but
not in a way that limits me, because it's too different. But when I see you, bruh, and I mean this sincerely, when I see you with your sons, it is awe-striking to me. I am blown away and inspired because I see you doing stuff that isn't part of the basic. It's above board, right? It's above board, and I'm not ashamed to sit here and say to another brother, man, I love what you do with your sons, because I love the God that's in you that strengthens you to do it, right? What's what's in that for you? And I mean, I kind of said it. I know God's is the driving mechanism in your day to day, but God's there for all of us.
yeah.
Not all of us gravitate to Him. So,
Mm. Hello.
so
Hello.
what's there, Sam, man, that says to you, I'm going to hold on to His unchanging hand, and I'm going to trust Him through this process.
Well, and you said it, right? I've got to hold on to his unchanging hand. And it's about the
Mm-hmm.
trust that I have for God that he won't leave me nor forsake me.
Mm,
The daily walk with Samuel is not an easy walk, right? What most people take for granted. Tesca wrote a book a year ago called Different, Just Like You,
yeah,
because
excellent book.
people look at Samuel and they're like, okay, what's wrong with him? He's different, but he's just like you. He still wants love,
Mm-hmm.
right? He still needs to eat. He still needs to sleep. He wants to have fun. There are things that are on his heart and on his mind that he wants
Yeah.
to do. He's got goals and dreams, but it's up to us as the parents to translate, what he believes that God has for him and where he wants to go into getting it done,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, as a 20-year-old young man now in June will be 21, right?
Mm,
It's difficult, when your 21-year-old still can't, wipe himself when he goes to the bathroom. Well,
right,
we'll end up having to do that for the rest of his life,
right,
right?
right.
God's given that for us to do. What most people take for granted, if you're late for work or you're late for school, you jump up and you get dressed, you run down the stairs and you go do what you have to go do. For us, it is a half-hour venture to get
Mm,
Samuel ready, brushed, to the bathroom, clothed, and then walk down the stairs,
Mm.
right? So that he can get to where he has to go. We can't plan last minute and say, I'll just be, I'll get there on time.
Let's just jump up and go.
Everything for us has to be a process of planning and has to be a
Mm.
process um, of being intentional about every movement that we do. Even
Right.
when we, as a elected official, most of my counterparts and colleagues, they can just go do what they go do. It is a
Right.
planned process for me every time. And if he comes, it's an even bigger planned
It's even
process,
bigger.
right? So it is always you know, what are we doing about Samuel? Like most people say, here we are, Teska and I have been married this December will make 25 years. A
Praise
couple
God.
months ago,
Praise
we
God.
went to Aruba, and it was the first time we had been on a vacation by ourselves. But that
Mm.
was an ordeal because even though Samuel is 20 years old and Theodore is 19, we had to make sure that there was going to be a babysitter here that could help Samuel get done everything he needed to get done.
Wow.
And so we can't just say we're going on vacation like everybody else can,
Right.
and
There's a plan
there
that has to be implemented.
yeah, I mean, look, I had family members that like, well, we'll try and help and we'll do this. And I was like, look, I can't work with this try
With a
and I
try.
can't do I was like, okay, I've got to take this on and I've got to, and as
Yeah.
frustrating as it was for other people, you know, at one point I just had to say, look, it might be frustrating for you, but this is my life, right? I can't go do something if this doesn't happen, right?
Right.
So it's like, don't worry about it. I'll take care of that. You help where you can, right? And
Mm.
so for us, it is a daily grind of making choices about either what we can or can't do, and we believe that we can all do all things through Christ who strengthens us. As a matter of fact, that's one of the things that we ask Samuel to repeat every night before he goes to bed.
Mm.
Hey, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, right? Because even though people might put limitations on him, we believe that if God has it for him to do, that it will get done,
That's
right?
right.
So for us, it is
Yeah.
it is a daily grind of okay, how do we get this done? Not whether or not we can do it, but how do we get it done and being intentional about our planning to get it done. So God is, He is our blessing, but He is also our responsibility.
Yeah.
And in that responsibility, there are things that we might want to do that God might say, yep, you have to plan a little bit harder to get that done,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Because
Right.
Samuel
Right.
comes first,
Samuel first. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. That is huge. I think the key word that stands out for me, man, and it was two really. One was choice, and the other is responsibility. Right? There's a choice to be responsible,
Yep. Yep.
and the fact that you guys have stepped into the realm of saying, "I'm blessed by making that choice," is huge. And I think that that's something that I hope everybody understands that's listening. And I see my girl Lois is on, so I hope that folks hear that and understand that you know in parenting across the board, regardless of the challenges of the child, there's a responsibility that we choose to take on, you
That's
know,
right.
and that's huge for us. And particularly, I want to make this very clear, especially to our brothers. You know, when I hear other young men or brothers older than me, talk about all of the dismays and the issues they may find with the sisters that they have had children with, I still say to them, you had a choice. That there was a decision somewhere in that path to either be there or not be there,
That's right.
to be responsible or not be responsible. And, when you choose not to be responsible and step into the place of parenting, you've blocked a blessing. You've blocked an opportunity to nurture, develop a living being that can, make an impact in the world that you probably couldn't have made, but you could help them get through some of the obstacles to get to a place where
Say
that,
so.
hey, that's the prayer. I always tell everybody, listen, I pray every day that my sons far exceed the man that I am. Far exceed. But I know that the only way that they can ever do that is if I share my mistakes and I
That's right.
share my struggles. And if I share the areas where I've gotten good or bad at, so that they can not make the same mistakes and they might get a little bit further in the race.
We
So
call that showing our scars,
showing our
right?
scars. That's right.
And I used to do a training. I ran a mentoring program at Drew University back in 96, 96, 97, 98. Uh, and we used to use roots
Mm,
as for the mentors that we would work with in the initial training. And so there's a part where Kunta Kinte's father Kunta Kinte chases is trying to protect his sheep, and he
Hmm.
chases off a lion, and the father gets really upset with him, and Kunta Kinte doesn't understand it, and the father pulls up uh, his skirt and shows him where he tried to do the same thing at that age, but the lion almost crippled him, and he still has the scars. So we
Right.
talk about showing our scars to our children so they understand the struggles that
That's
we've
right.
been through and what we don't want to see them
And
go
what we
through.
don't want them to go through.
That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is so important for us as parents to do that. I think that the more, as particularly, and I'm going to say this to men, the more that we are transparent and we show our scars and we show, our bumps from knocking our head in the dark,
Yeah,
the least amount of energy or damage that happens to our children, our offspring, right? And ultimately, you want them to understand how to get through and to deal with some adverse moments, but there are some struggles that they should not ever have to deal with because we took that on for them,
that's
right?
right.
It's for me, it's like Christ. Christ came and
Hmm.
bled and died for me so that
That's
I
right.
wouldn't have to struggle in certain areas. Well, my son shouldn't have to struggle in certain areas if I live a Christ-like life, so that
Hello.
he doesn't have to deal with some of those adverse moments. And so when we take on that ownership and that responsibility, we can get there and we can do that in that way, man. I think that is so valuable, and it's one of our parenting tools. If brothers take the decision or make the decision to be responsible.
And they've
Um,
got to make that decision. I always say,
yeah,
people say, well, what's the difference between our parents and us, this generation? Because the divorce rate is at a 50%, higher
yeah,
rate now, higher than 50%. And I always say that, in today's generations, we're always trying to figure out if we made the right decision.
yeah.
In our grandparents, in many of our parents' situations, they made the decision right.
Right.
Right? They just made the decision,
They just
and
made the
many times
decision.
they saw struggles, but because they made the decision, it was like, okay, we're going to make this decision right. We're going to work through this
Yeah,
together. And so, really, that's a part of it, right? And when you have children, what we have to realize, especially as fathers, because we want
mhm,
greatness for our children, we have to make
yeah,
that decision in order to give them the tools. Also, sometimes to take on to stand in front of them when the darts are being thrown. But the
yeah,
reality is that for all of us, what we really want is at the core of it is that God has given us a gift to be in charge of. And the biggest issue for many of us is how will the world receive our gift?
hmm,
Right? And
wow,
so when we look at
yeah,
parenting at the very most basic level, how is the world going to receive the gift that God has given us to give to
yep,
them?
yep,
And for those of us who have children who are differently able with cerebral palsy or autism or things of that nature, or there are other things, we're always concerned that first day of school, right? How are the other
hmm.
children going to
How are they
treat,
going to receive my baby?
right?
Right.
How are they going to receive the gift that God gave us? But one of the things that we also have to do is to recognize that through our faith, that God has put other people here that will be blessings to our children,
That's
right?
right.
Even when we don't know it. I remember a story, and I'm sorry, I don't know how much time we have, but
You go.
yeah, I could
Go
do
right
this all
ahead.
day long,
Go
but
right ahead, bro.
I remember watching Tesca and I had just come back from LA at a conference. It was probably like 2003, 2004. And I watched a story about a young man, and this goes to show the humanity of especially young people, right? Uh, Young man from Michigan who had cerebral palsy and autism and had spastic limbs, but
Hmm.
he wanted to be in spasticity. For those people who don't know what I mean, it means that their limbs are very tight.
Tight.
So they don't bend, like they don't run the same way because their knees don't bend all the way up. You
Right.
might have it where your foot flexes like this, their foot might stay down like
Stay
this.
down.
So they have spasticity in their limbs. And this young man, because he had spasticity in his limbs, he wanted to be, but fully cognitive. He wanted to be part of a team. And
Hmm.
so from the time he was in seventh grade in middle school, he was trying to be part of teams. Well, when he got to basketball, they were like, well, you really can't play, but you could be the water boy. When it came to
Hmm.
baseball, they're like, well, you really can't play, but you could be the bat boy. When it came to football, they're like, well, you really can't play, but you could be, the water boy, the towel boy. His mother saw the cross country coach, and the cross country coach said, well, if he can run and finish, then he can be on the team.
He can be on the team.
This young man, from the time he was in 8th grade, was on the cross country team, but it took him twice as long to finish the race as it did everybody else. And so for the first year, I mean, cross country,
Yeah.
it's your almost 2 mile run, right,
Yep.
over
Over some
brooks and over
terrain.
trees and stuff that had fallen.
Yep.
And the mother said, I would watch my son come home, and I really didn't want to go to meets because he would fall down,
Mm.
hundreds of times, but he'd get back up and he'd finish. And I'd be cleaning up after every cross country meet. I'd be cleaning up his body, which was bloody, battered, and bruised. But he was doing what he loved, and he was able to be part of a team. Well, it got to be part at a point in time during this young man, and I never forget it because I couldn't tell the story without crying, because I
Mm.
would watch. They talked about it because it was on ESPN, right?
Okay.
Matter of fact, I was remembering watching Stewart. What is his name?
Okay. Uh, I know you're talking
The
about
brother who passed
who
with
passed away.
cancer.
Yep.
Um, Stuart
Scott.
Scott,
Yep.
and he was telling the story. And this young man, it got to a point where the other kids got to know him on the circuit. So by
Wow.
the time he was in 10th grade, he would run, but it would, even though he was out there by himself, the other kids would finish the race, and then they would rerun the race with him. They
Mm.
would rerun the race so that they could finish the race with this other kid. And that was the humanity of these other kids. By the time he was a senior, his cross country team was up for the state championship. He had to run his best time in order for them to win the state championship. He ran his best time, and it was the kids from all the other teams that ran that race with him that
Wow.
helped propel him to
Help
run his
him.
best time, right? How does the world receive the gift that God has given for us to give? He
Mm.
inspired hundreds of kids over those 4 years that he was running cross country, and they talked about it in that story. How
Wow.
does the world receive our gift? And how do we release the gift in the world so that it can prosper, so that God can show that He is God
That's right.
and that it was only Him that gave you the gift, the giver of the gift, and that grew the gift so that other people can see it?
That's it. And that part of the story, I think, Sam, for me is the crowning glory. It's the ability to release the gift. Because I think sometimes as parents, well, especially when we're dealing with children with challenges, we're so quick to want to put them in the bubble and protect them and keep them away from everybody, not realizing that they were brought to you with the responsibility to share
Mm, mm,
their gift because it's going to inspire somebody. I think
yeah.
all of us are here with that in mind, to be an inspiration to others. We're never meant to be these hoarders of our gift. The
Mm,
objective is to share and spread. And so, oh man, yeah. Releasing that is huge, especially
yeah.
from a parental place, because it's such a guarded and protective job. So to
Yeah.
be protective and guarded of something, of an item, but still also be willing to let folks be exposed to it or see it and share it is hard. And so yeah,
Yes, it is.
man, that's powerful. I appreciate that, man. I appreciate
Yeah.
that story. Listen, we could do this like you said all night, bro. We could probably chime back and forth all night long. I don't want to keep either of us beyond a long moment of time because I know I didn't see Tesca walk by in the background. I know you probably didn't see her. She probably like, okay,
I
how long
saw
we
her. I know where that woman is every second of the day, brother.
There you go, John.
That's
There you
that's my
go.
that's my gift right there. I
There
know
you
I
got.
know how that
Listen,
gift
you
works.
got Chad. Listen, I see you moving.
That's it. That's it.
That's what's up. Listen, do me this one last solid minute, and then we're gonna lock into closing out tonight. Share with me, because you mentioned it earlier about the fact that you said Mercer County has some of the best special services in the state. Share with us briefly some of the resources that are out there that you've had an opportunity to benefit from, that might be something that might help someone else who's out listening, that could help them out in some way or fashion.
Yeah, no, so Mercer County Special Services School District actually has its own full school district.
Mm.
Every county does not have its own full school district, and many of them are not designed to carry the scope of a young person from 2.5 years old all the way through graduation.
Mm.
So the Mercer County Special Services School District is the only school district that Samuel's ever known. Right
Okay.
when he was 2.5, there is one of the schools called Joseph Capella, which
Mm-hmm.
deals with children from 2.5 to 5. and maybe 6, depending upon their development when they're going through that school.
Okay.
Samuel was there, and it was phenomenal operating in that school because, again, for me, we always heard that doctor,
Mm.
don't be surprised if he never walks, if he never talks, if he just lays there like a vegetable. And we were of the mindset that God is going to show you wrong. He's going to prove you wrong. And the very first time that Samuel walked over to me in his K-Walker, and for Father's Day, they had the fathers come in, and they had these little gold medals, and they were
Okay.
playing. And I remember it. Did you ever know you were my hero? And Samuel walks over in his K-Walker and puts it around my neck. Man, I'm crying like a big baby, just done. But I mean, that's Joseph Capella. And then he moved to Mercer Middle School, which
Okay.
actually kept him up until he was 12. And now he's at the high school. In the
Wow.
high school, you're allowed to stay until you're 21. But because of COVID, the federal government and the state government allowed those students an extra year because you couldn't visit other programs that
Right.
during that COVID year. So Samuel, even though he's graduating this year, he is very clear that he does not want to go back to school. And I'm like, no, you got a bonus year, brother. He's like, but this is my last year.
This is
No,
it.
just
I'm
finish.
done. What are you
This is
talking
your
about?
last year and you're graduating, but you have a bonus year. Recognize the bonus year is
This is a
coming.
post grad year for you, Doc.
Yeah.
You got a post grad.
But Mercer County Special Services School District is one of the best in the state.
Awesome.
And, they take incredible care of Samuel, and he's gone further than we even imagined that he could go.
Awesome.
And they've
Awesome.
nurtured that.
Awesome. Awesome. Listen, Doc, I appreciate you, man. I so
You as well,
appreciate
brother.
you. And listen, I thought I knew you beforehand, but tonight you shared some stuff, man, that brings us even closer together, dude. So listen, we gonna have to break bread real soon so we can
Love you like
continue this
cooked food,
dialogue.
bro. Love you like cooked food, man.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Soul food all day long.
Yes,
Sit down,
sir.
take your shoes off.
Hello. Hello.
So, with that, man, I want to thank all of our folks who are watching. I see my brother Calvin's been with us for the whole ride. I see Lois, you've been with us. I appreciate you and all those who get a chance to see this broadcast after we've gone off the air, whether it be on Facebook or YouTube or TikTok or Instagram, wherever you see it. Know this, that we love you here at Royalty Mission Network, that we are here for you, and we want to make sure that you understand that by being transparent does not make you weak. It makes you stronger. So let's do the strong work that's needed to do the best work that God's called us to do. Love you. Take care of yourselves, and God bless.